All right, welcome to Beyond the Fundamentals. And we are here this evening with our FSI crew from Wednesday night. How's everybody doing?
You doing great?
Good, man.
It's good. It's good to see
I'm
everybody
looking
here.
Right.
forward to
Good
Yeah.
until I
One,
heard all that devil music.
All the
it.
devil music.
You know,
one's
steel string guitars are just improper in the house of the Lord.
one string banjo.
we
I thought it sounded like Metallica.
I took it is it's Dream Theater. The song is Change of Seasons. And every time I use that intro, because I'm trying to like mix up the intros a little bit, and every time I use the intro, I get a copyright hit. And they tell me to take it down because and so then I close it off. I mean, I need to close off the intros anyway so that the video starts right away when people are ready to start hearing. So yeah, that's kind of funny. So I took the one string banjo actually. That I don't know if anybody noticed that guitar has seven strings on it, not
I did.
one. So
Hillbillies can't count.
took the one string from the one string banjo at the Leighton Flowers debate and I
And
put
I
it on my
added it.
guitar. Now I've got seven strings on it. I'm trying to find the file to where we're supposed to be looking at the video tonight. And that is here. I moved all my files recently so that they're all in the cloud. There we go. So tonight, and y'all relax. I know. So for those who don't know in the audience, we do FSI every Wednesday night, and every once in a while we miss, but like we do this every Wednesday night, but we don't go live all the time. So we might have some nervous Nellies out there, but well, now you'll know you know why I have a green screen and all that. I didn't do my makeup today though. But so I'm thankful for the crew who came out. There's a lot of people who come in on Wednesday nights who are comfortable when we're offline, not so comfortable when we're offline, which is completely fine. There's no judgment against them. Not everybody needs to be, if people don't want to show their face in public, they don't need to. That's fine. All right. And I do think we're missing out on some folks that I think have a lot of insight, which I wish would come. But it's fine. That's fine. We'll just have to write down what they say. Somebody in the comments said, "What song is that?" That is called "Change of Seasons" by Dream Theater, and that's just the intro. And the song is 23 minutes long. So if you want to listen to it, brace yourself. So that's what that is. So tonight we're here. I'm gonna bring everybody together and listen to this video by Derek Webb. And if you haven't heard it before, I think a lot of people on this channel and on some other channels that we're friends with, you're used to hearing these Derek Webb clips where he used to be a Calvinist and now he's an atheist or no longer a Christian or something like that. That's not the angle that we're taking on this. Uh, so I figured what we'll just do is we'll just get into it and we'll play it until you want to comment on something. So I backed it up. I said in the email that went out that we would start it at about 4:30 mark, but I have it back to the 2:20 mark for a little bit of context so that we know why he's saying what he's saying. And then we'll just pause it and comment as we go, just like we usually comment at FSI. If the comments get too numerous, maybe we raise our little Zoom hands to put everybody in order to try to squeeze in some comments.
We
So I'm gonna
also just kind of can we give a
yeah,
couple like parameters just for the audience because we are live and
yeah.
there's a reason why we're live and one of the reasons there's many reasons why we're live, but one of the reasons that we're doing this live is to try and give the audience members a sense for the type, manner and mode in which we are conducting these sessions on Wednesday night. So there's a it's manyfold in the sense where we'd like people to observe and maybe infer some conversational or group think or Ephesians 4 like edification model skills from. And then also it's also in some ways a means to put it out there to see if anybody would also be interested in joining on Wednesday nights and stuff like that. So there's a number of different reasons why we would do this, but this should give you a rough sketch of what Wednesday nights are like for us.
Yeah. I appreciate you interjecting with that, Nick. The two main things that we ask people to do when they're interacting is something we call Rule Omega and Protocol X. And we have videos on both of those. So if anybody does feel the need or the desire to come join our conversations, you need to at least be familiar with those. And then the more you can be familiar with our growth and transformation playlist, the better also.
Yeah. And then I guess the last thing, preliminary thing I would say is, as you are observing the manner and mode in which we are discussing, this isn't just kind of like a free-for-all pooled ignorance, kind of everybody gives their
Right.
opinion on the matter kind of thing. We do have some, guidelines and intentional initiatives that all of us are aware of that we should be practicing while we're going through this. So it shouldn't just look like a bunch of random people just saying a bunch of random things. It should be a little slightly more structured than that, while also
Right.
maintaining a level of creativity and freedom of expression to be able to try and educe out whatever the person might be trying to say.
Yeah. And at the end of this session, we will let people in the audience who are stage 5 and above to vote somebody off the island if they didn't perform. Just kidding. My wife watches. She loves Survivor. That's funny to me. All right, I'm going to share the screen and we're going to start listening to this video and then we're going to react to it. And I'll stop it. Or you can tell me if you want me to stop it because you heard something that you want to comment on, let me know. Otherwise, I'll stop it and ask periodically.
For a second?
Sure. So that's a lyric. I'm working on a new record right now, and that's
Is that the Jesus Hypothesis?
The Jesus Hypothesis is the new record, and I mean I've spent 20 years. I've been a professional musician, singer, songwriter, whatever, for about 20 years. More than 20 years, 25 years, 10 years I was in Caedmon's. We started that band when I was right out of high school. And then about 15 years or so I've been a solo artist, but this has been my job for a super long time. And so Caedmon's, as you kind of alluded, although we were a Texas band, we were like a folk rock band, but we were young. We were in our early 20s, late teens, early 20s. And we, a lot of us were Christians. We grew up with it in our houses. It was a big part of the culture down in Texas. And I was actually born in Memphis. And so I've always lived in the South. And so that was a lot of our language. And so a lot of the songs we were writing kind of had those fingerprints on them. We wound up when we signed I'm just giving you a little quick context. When we signed our first record deal, we spent about 3 or 4 years independent, did pretty well as an indie band in the early 90s. And then we signed our first record deal with a label here in Nashville, a Warner Brothers imprint here in Nashville. And they were looking to figure out how to market us. And which is their job. They're trying to figure out where do we put these guys to help them be found by the people who might be looking for what they're making. And that's what great marketing is, that's what it's good for. And they determined, we should market them as Christian because that, even though we were like there was no singer-songwriter category back in the early 90s. There just wasn't. Yeah. That's a huge category now. Yeah. But that's probably where we would have landed. But instead they put us in that Christian category, which we didn't care. They were willing to help us, and like and miraculously we did really well at that, and I didn't think we would because none of us really saw ourselves as like a Christian band or whatever. We didn't really
like Christians making music, not necessarily
kinda yeah it was definitely more like that. It was incidental to the fact that we were just trying to write great songs, and soundtrack for our lives that we were not finding hardly anywhere else, that no one else was really writing from our perspective, and so that was what we were trying to do. And so, but the thing about a category like Christian, and I'll say this as well, and
No, this is the payload that I want to listen to first.
I say it all the time, but I think it's helpful language, that the word Christian, when applied to anything other than a human being, is a marketing term. It's just a marketing term. That's all it is. Because
Yeah.
educational institutions, radio stations, theme parks, bubblegum, those things cannot be Christian. They can't. Now, they can be made by people who call themselves Christians. And that's a great marketing term for maybe some of those things.
Yeah.
But you can't, like, music cannot be Christian in the same way that a person is Christian when you call a person Christian, because anything that does not have a soul to be saved cannot technically be Christian.
Right.
Which is to say, the music you hear on your local Christian radio station is not the only saved, redeemed, holy music that there will be in heaven, just because somebody rubber stamped it and plays it on a Christian radio station. Christian music is just as liable to lie to you and to misrepresent the truth as any other kind of music. It's just, you know. And so those terms are not super helpful, especially when people, as maybe you did, and I know that I kind of did, growing up, you know, you're kind of turned loose in a Christian bookstore and told just consume at will, you just turn your powers of discernment off. They don't matter here. Everything here has been pre-vetted for your spiritual
this stuff's
nourishment.
okay. Anything outside of this place,
not okay. Yeah, that sounds more like classic kind of fear consumerism.
Yeah.
It's a great strategy.
It's a great strategy.
But it's not Christian stuff in there. It's just music, just like everything else. And
So I want to pause there. What are y'all's thoughts on that?
There's a lot to say, actually. So two things, obviously the first point, the stuff, the station, the bookstore, whatever, not being Christian. I know that's going to ruffle a lot of people's feathers because they're used to saying, I went to the Christian bookstore. I listen to Christian music and Christian music only. And I guess my first bit that I'd want to share is like, try and hear him. Like, know that, okay, that ruffles your feathers, but like, try and set it aside just for a minute. Try and hear what he's saying about it. Like, be angry about it when you're done with the video, you know. Try and actually be present in active listening to hear what this guy's communicating. It's actually something that we do or try to do with Rule Omega when we're in FSI. If somebody brings something up that might piss us off, well, set it aside for a second. Try and read, you know, listen between the lines a little bit. You know, maybe the individual shared something with imperfect words. Well, do your best to try and imagine where the ideal words were pointing. So, like, yeah, they didn't use those words, but imagine they did. Where would they have pointed? Like, you got to do some active work in your listening. So that's first point. And then
It's almost like imagining a payload that isn't packaged well.
Yeah.
Like, what is the thing behind the representation that's like, maybe there's a really great computer that comes in a dumb looking box, you know, and maybe our words and our attempts to say things is dumb looking box, but there's like a really great computer in there, something like that.
Yeah,
try to see the computer despite the packaging.
Yeah, it's almost like we hear "don't judge a book by its cover" a lot in the world. In many ways, I feel like it's an echo of that. You know, somebody walks out onto a stage and might not look as you expect them to look to maybe sing some amazing song. But they open their mouth and it just wows you. So either you could have focused on how they look and just stayed there, or given it some opportunity to surprise you. The giving it opportunity part is the active listening part, in my view. And then the second part was his comment of, you know, Christian quote unquote music has, I'm not going to quote him exactly right, but he said, you know, can lie to you just as much as maybe secular music or something. Now, if they were angry to like maybe 7, now they're angry to 11. Because, that's blasphemous in some circles. And I think the important part is what he says thereafter. And that is we have a tendency to go into kind of a mode of assuming safe space. So like, let's say we walk into the church building and we're like, well, we're good here. We know nobody's going to hurt us here. So our discernment is checked at the door. Like we only need discernment when we're out in the world, because that's where the wolves are. I know there aren't any here. So the discernment I'll just leave out there. And I think his point, even though he's maybe not making it exactly the same way I am, is that we need to have discernment everywhere. I read news about how people are abused in church all the time. It seems to me that if we're gonna have discernment outside, some really bad things happen there. Well, the same kinds of things can happen in the church buildings. And maybe some less wise individuals could benefit from having slightly more wise folks staying active in their discernment and being ready to stand up and say, hey, nope, this isn't good. We can't, if we're going to really represent the Lord here, what's just happened needs to be addressed. I think too many people have allowed bad things to happen in their churches because they just were on autopilot and stopped their discernment.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I want to take this idea of, okay, we've been recommending some books on the channel, right? This book, people will say, oh, that's not a Christian book. That actually is written by a Christian, but like, no book is a Christian book. This book isn't a Christian book. I'm the Christian. I'm the one with the spirit or the soul. The book isn't. I'm the one that Christianizes whatever I hear. I'm the one that discerns whatever I hear and extracts the Christianness from it. So whether I'm watching Star Wars or whether I'm watching The Lion King, or if I'm reading a Richard Rohr book, or if I have a conversation with Nick and Kayla about the Hindu Trinity, I am the Christian. I don't need that stuff to be classified as Christian. Does that make sense? Like, I don't need that stuff to be called Christian. I, as the Christian, am the one that like filters it through the discernment that I have. Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
Does, and I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Roberta.
It makes sense to me. I mean, you can walk into a Christian bookstore, so-called, and find just as many false biblical ideas and ideologies if you walk into any other secular, so to speak, bookstore. And I don't think we need to be afraid of that, though. I mean, it kind of goes back to what you said, Kevin, about pointing to the thing. You know, you put it under the Christian umbrella, and people that are Christians are looking for some kind of edification or some kind of information that they can get there, but that doesn't guarantee that it's all correct and it's all true, and they do need that discernment. But I don't think, on the other hand, they should be afraid of that either. I mean, to pick up a book that's totally different from anything that they would ever read and say, I can't read this because I know who wrote it and I know what they believe. But nobody is 100% wrong, and there's truth somewhere in there that may change your life. And I can attest to that. So I would encourage that. It is so freeing not to be afraid of the world. And that is what I've gotten here from this group, that I can, without being judged or without being criticized, pick up something that's off the wall and not specifically Christian, but read it with new eyes and see, wow, this really applies to my life.
Yeah.
And I can be changed and transformed by this, even though it was not necessarily by a Christian person. So I appreciate that freedom that I have never had in my life until about 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, what I'm hearing as a thread line through Kyle, Kevin, and Roberta is to initially try and, take what we observed in the video and first and foremost extract out of it the moral implications of Christianizing something that is impossibly Christian, like an object. And I think that
Mhm.
is the payload, like Kevin, you've been saying, the big punchline that Derek Webb is getting at is the stark realization to a bunch of Christian, a Christian population that here all of you are duped by the illusion that some sort of objects can bear the title that only a sentient and agentic being could behold. I think that's a stark realization, and I think that what I'm seeing you guys do is, for the audience sake and for the sake of the analysis of the video, is to show the importance, like the dire importance of how to separate out the morality of this phenomenon so that we can actually look at it from a purely semantic level, where you have that stark semantic realization that it is improper to use a very deeply personal adjective to describe something like an object. Like the adjective of a Christian does not belong, like a Christian book, that doesn't belong, that doesn't work out semantically. But you can't analyze and you can't uncover the truth that that's an inappropriate adjective until you separate out the emotional moral attachment that you have to these expedient phrases. And that's also brought out in the video with the marketability of it, is that it's almost subliminal, where it comes out so quickly in our language that it almost feels like the words are so tightly bonded, but they are definitely inappropriately bonded. So Christian book, Christian music, like that just rolls off the tongue as if it is actually a reality, or that those words are truly pointing to a real thing in the world, and they are not, which makes that phrase Christian book, when you boil it down to bare logic, bare phenomenon, it's a lie. So you have a bunch of Christians within their cultural cognitive grammar that are just lying to each other.
Wow.
And then you have the glossing over that semantic falsity or that semantic lie. The glossing that makes it shiny and look good is morality, the moral propagation of, like, this elevates the level of music if it's Christian. So you have these two layers there that are like almost impenetrable of the linguistic semantic lie glossed over and hardened by morality. And I saw you guys at least, picking away or hammering away at that glossed surface by trying to extract out the morality so that we could see the semantics for what they actually are.
So Nick, a couple of times I think like 3 times I watched you do this gesture where you extracted morality and extracted an emotional attachment to morality out of something.
Yeah.
Now, so I see like this physical thing, like pulling something
Yep.
out of a cylinder almost. And so
Yes.
it,
So what I think it is, I think I have a sense for what it is. I think that what Christians are doing, or what Derek Webb is pointing to, is Christians are taking something that is a personal identifying, a very core identifying feature, which is they are a Christian. That's very tightly knit into the fabric of somebody's identity. And that in the immaturity, in the underdevelopment of that identity, in an effort to create a safe space and an insulated society or an insulated group, they are projecting that identity onto objects like music or books or buildings, like that's a Christian building over there. So they're taking their identity in and psychologically projecting it out in order to further solidify that insulated societal group
yeah.
in an inappropriate way.
So,
That's
so
what I
you're
think. I think
saying,
it's pure projection.
you're saying projection, and I don't think that's wrong. I'm not disagreeing with that, but I think another word, injection, because
Okay.
the morality isn't there to begin with. It has to be, if they're seeing morality inside like this book and not another one, they're having to, like you're saying, project, they're having to inject it in there. And the reason I'm saying inject is because you were saying extract out, right?
Yep. Yep.
And so, and I'm gonna throw a word salad at you for a second, or everybody. It's like Christians have a default mode perspectival conditioner. And I'm going to say
Say it
that
again.
again. Think of perspectival capacity, like a stage 5 capacity for multiple perspectives. But in stage 3, you have a default mode perspectival conditioner that causes you by default automatically, before you consciously make any discernment, to
Yeah.
classify everything as either Christian or not Christian.
Okay. Got it. Yep.
And so
Yeah.
that alters the perspective, and now that's your perspective, and you don't even know you just were conditioned to give that to yourself.
Yeah.
Can I riff on that?
Oh yeah, you got your hand up
So,
anyway.
so it went up as soon as so Nick was articulating this beautifully, in my opinion, and it dawned on me. It feels like the inverse of the story where the question of should we eat the food of that was given to idols. It feels like they're defining food as Christian food, but like everything else. And I started thinking, okay, how is this playing out, or why might it be playing out? Why will so many people, I can just predict the comments. For example, like Kevin said, there are no Christian books. Well, what about the Bible? Like you're going to get knee-jerk reactions, and you're going to get people that are going to fight, and they're going to say, well, I know I listen to Christian music. It talks about God. It like the whole song is one of the Psalms, or they're going to have justifications for things, and they're going to be contentious about it. And was thinking as Nick was talking, well, why might somebody be prone to do that? It felt like the inverse of like the question of should we even eat this food that was given to idols. It's like there are things in the world that a Christian has left in their rearview mirror, and they associate their former self with those things, and those things being bad. And so they're looking to replace them with Christian things. So whatever the food was that was given to idols, it's kind of like their old self, and they're doing work to try and identify and associate with this new life. And there's kind of like a replacement going on for each of those categories. So it was music, it was maybe art, it was maybe who they read, all of these categories, whatever the secular thing was, those need to be bold, secular, do not touch. Everything that, has a green light, we're adding that Christian label to just be able to categorize these things are good, these things are bad. What I'm wondering is if it wasn't necessarily the secular food, the secular music, the secular art, the blah, 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 that was necessarily bad, but it was their relationship to it. So being in right relationship, being able to see those things for what they really are, being able to see them as, think in terms of magnetism. Are they drawing you further away from truth? Are they drawing you toward confusion? Are they disorienting, or are they orienting? Are they helping you see the world for what it really is, or is it putting up a smokescreen?
Or is there like a level of transformation you need to achieve before you can impress yourself upon it to the point where it can help you? For example, I might, as an Army veteran who's been to war, I might be able to encounter a snake in the woods and it becomes my dinner. But a 4-year-old would not do that. But I have hopefully more capacity than a 4-year-old so that I can encounter things and ingest them safely or with minimized risk that someone else could not. Does that make sense?
So what I think I'm hearing from you two, if I can try and tie Kevin's comment together about the default, the perspectival default conditioner, and putting that together with what Kyle said about how that default conditioner might functionally operate. What I'm sensing is that I think that we're creating a warning, or at least we're problematizing the fact that it might be dangerous. It might be illusory or self-deceptive to start accepting paradigms which provide a perspectival linguistic default for you, where there's a good world and a bad world. It's like if you're accepting a view of the world, linguistically speaking or socially speaking, that gives you the default of good world, bad world, so Christian world, secular world, then that's no different than like eisegeting reality. So it's like it's coming to reality with a preconceived false dichotomy that is not going to allow you to see scripture phenomenologically as it is. And so that's what I think we've created like a warning about, and maybe to try and look at, like, that's why Derek Webb saying something like there is no such thing as a Christian book. So anybody who comes out with that as a byproduct of their perspectival default conditioner is merely demonstrating that they are self-deceptive when it comes to interpreting their reality, because they see it through a Christian, non-Christian reality. There's no such thing as a Christian reality.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying? So you're eisegeting reality.
Yeah, I thought that's such a good terms to eisegete reality. It reminds me of let's take it to a non-religious domain to make it easier for people to swallow. Like, is it a Republican or a Democrat shoe? You know, you don't think of shoes that way. You think of whether or not you need to run or walk or put on a suit. You know, they asked Michael Jordan, they said, you're a Democrat. Why don't you speak out for the Democrats? And he said, because Republicans buy Nikes too. That was his answer.
And
I think that's a
they
great
do.
answer. I want to,
And with these
well,
points, go ahead.
well, let me throw something out there real quick, James, and then we'll go to we'll hear your comment, and then we'll go to the raised hands. But to jump on what Kyle was saying about the things offered to idols, it reminded me of Jeremiah chapter 10, and I'm going to share the screen real quick because you know the Independent Baptists always use this against Christmas trees, when really it's probably something like totem poles. And what I want to bring attention to is verse 5 in Jeremiah chapter 10, because they're talking about basically idols. Thus saith the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen, be not dismayed at the signs of the heaven, for the heathen are dismayed at them, for the customs of the people are vain. One cutteth a tree out of the forest, the work of the hands, the workman with the axe. They deck it with silver and with gold. They fasten it with nails and with hammers, that it move not. They are upright as a palm tree, but speak not. They must needs be born, because they cannot go. Be not afraid of them, for they cannot do evil, neither also is it in them to do good. And it kind of sounds to me like, regardless of what people had in mind when they made this thing, the thing itself is neither good nor bad. It depends on how you use it. It makes me think of Jackie Chan. In Jackie Chan's early movies, he was really famous for taking something like a table or a chair or a banister or a belt and using it as a weapon. And so that thing, you wouldn't think of it as a weapon. You'd think of it as a cup or a chair or something like that. But because of how he was using it, he weaponized it. And so the person who apprehends the thing decides what it is. And if Jackie Chan wants it to be a weapon, it is now a weapon. You know, and the other guy who's getting beat over the head with it probably agree with that. And then I had one other comment, which was something that I found helpful that kind of emerged to me through everything that was said, and especially when Kyle was talking. I think we have an issue with nouning things when some things should be verbed. We think of Christian as a noun, we think of truth as a noun, when perhaps we should think of these things. Christian is a verb. It's something you be and do. Truth is something you do. John Vervaeke, in a video I heard today, he said, my faith is being constantly committed in infidelity to ongoing improvement that I need to do, ongoing improved truthfulness or something like that. So there's like a verb feel to it, more so than just a noun feel. James, you had a quick comment, and then we'll go back to raised hands.
Well, yes, it just gets back to the thought of well, like what Kyle was talking about and what several have mentioned. You know, you could put any person or a lot of people in this picture, but here's the picture I was going to paint. This is like, for example, taking that we can't make something Christian that is just an object, or a song or a group or a title. You know, I in my years younger, I was a big Garth Brooks fan. I'm not saying I hate him now, but I mean, he has the song Unanswered Prayers. I mean, you know, you have the song Friends that we've sang since we was younger. And that's not the exact title of it. I can't think of the name. But what I'm getting at is that, but yet here we're going to profile a guy because he's in a country group. He's a bar owner. You know, all these things you want to go label at it, but yet here's a song, and I'm not trying to promote it religiously, and I'm not trying to not, but I'm just saying that's how we profile them. That's how they think. That's how they, you know, here's these things or these objects or these items, and here we want to take and just throw darts at them to make them and stick what we want them to be. When we don't get the real picture of the message of what was really just being said.
Yeah, the throwing the darts and make them stick is interesting. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. When it comes to Okay, raised hands. I see John and Tyra. I thought John's hand was up first, but it looks like Tyron is first in the queue. Y'all want to arm wrestle over it? Um,
He can go first. He can go first.
Nah, bless your heart. I'm muted, not muted. There we go. Hey, yeah, my hand keeps dropping out for some reason. Maybe it's the distance. It's the middle of the day down here.
coming from down under.
Late
Yeah.
morning. I'm listening to what's going on. I've listened to most of that interview. I know we haven't got very far into it,
Right.
but so I don't want to go beyond where we've gone with it. Other than my first impression is I felt really sorry for the guy. I moved away from that as I was listening to going, can't disagree with him on this and on that and on the other thing. And then I thought, why did he have to move away from whatever he was adhering to, following basically as his basic Christian life? Why did he have to move so far away from that in order to get a perspective, which actually brings him kind of in a circle to us, where we can see certain things, identify immediately with him as he's speaking, understand that he may be coming from a worldview that we hold that he no longer holds or whatever, but eliminating the worldview, getting rid of, improving the SNR, the signal to noise ratio, getting rid of all the noise, the visual noise, tattoos, all the other stuff that can assail our ability to actually hear and actually listen. You get to that stage with it. Listen to the guy, so he could sit in on any of our discussions. He could probably have a whale of a time with a lot of stuff that goes on. And he's had to take, now I'm not being previously familiar with him. I knew about Cademan's Call and wasn't my style of stuff, right? AC/DC, but but I knew about it. But his life experience has brought him to this place. I have a concern as someone who does have, I don't care what anyone says, we do have paradigms. We actually do. And every now and again, a paradigm will actually be truth, real truth, ultimate truth. The Lord is my shepherd. People interpret it different ways, but
yeah, the idea of a paradigm is to map out reality. So a good paradigm would have mostly truth, ideally.
Exactly. And I keep thinking about this. Pilate asked, what is truth? And truth was, he didn't recognize truth standing before him. Now, I know he's this physical man, but truth personified stood before him and he couldn't recognize it. This guy is seeing a whole lot of truth about things. And you would hope that his observations bring him back. I'm reminded of that proverb, train up a child, etc. I'm thinking redemptively in some way here. I'm not trying to cut across anything because I'm pretty much 100% agreement with all the observations made. I keep thinking about hoping for this individual and their eternal destiny, and things of that nature, and hope that that's going to be okay for him. But if I can eliminate that out of the picture and just listen, it's very interesting content. We are familiar with doing what he's talking about. Okay, he's talking about Christian book, which comes as like a, right? But we do it all the time. We do it with, we'll stand, I'm a preacher, I stand in the pulpit and I'll say, what people call the church isn't the church, for instance. And we immediately distinguish between something which Jesus established, it's a living organism, versus a building or an organization. We do it naturally with a lot of things. Or we can see some iconography from some bygone era. It's got Jesus look like he's been sucking on lemons and, he's been dipped in peroxide. Yeah, he's in this sort of thing, right? And we innately go, we might not know what he looked like, but we're pretty sure what he didn't look like. We make these separations naturally, and to elevate into our conscious that conscious part of our mind, a thought like a book isn't Christian, isn't a Christian. It can have content interesting to Christians, pertinent to what they're all the things that have been said, but ain't Christian. That's that's kind of like almost like an elevated thought, because it applies to everything. You look at a $100 note on sitting on the table, it has no value. It's the paper has no value, but what comes with it? What is its cultural and real value? It expresses something in relation to time spent doing something ultimately. We do this we have this innate knowing with all sorts of things, but having brought up to the surface can change a lot of how we think. And just that one thought, by the way, that word Christian, it can be at the same time both a noun and a verb. In grammar, it's called a gerund, right? So it can be both. And not that you subscribe to it, but good luck talking to most of the people we know and trying to stick to the distinction that we are currently all seeing and all acknowledging. Good luck with that. We're going to have to send them to watch his podcast and then converse with it. So I find this is a truth. This is true, not ultimate truth, but it's a true observation. And my thoughts are going to, okay, I want to observe that moving forward in a way that's helpful in my own thoughts and with those with whom I engage. But how do I do that without sounding as if I subscribe to other things, which I don't, without presenting a picture which would not be true of myself and all these things? So I haven't developed those thoughts yet, but I'm thinking about it. Very salient observation on his part, and the guy's good. I do think it's a shame that so much distance had to come between him and other things in some ways in order for him to be able to see what he sees. What a commentary on, in quotes, church life, that somebody has to leave it in order to see so many things. And that's heartbreaking to me, It really is. That affects me in that part of me that wants to get both angry and weep at the same time. That bit of you? So I better stop because
Yeah, it seems like it could be informative too, though. Like maybe that could be part of a healthy Christian breakfast, just to spend some time away.
Yeah.
But I noticed, John, that when you said the word observe, your hands did this. Your motion went this way.
Yeah.
Which seemed to indicate that maybe subconsciously observing something makes you larger.
Yeah, we don't notice it. I mean, I think everyone here has. You don't notice. We live in a microcosm, most of us as Christians, and actually even smaller than that. I'm a builder. I'm a pastor. All that stuff. Who cares, right? But the fact that I'm out in the world dealing with people who swear like a trooper, who carry on, they tell jokes within earshot that are the most disgusting jokes, but they're flaming well funny, and you end up doing yourself. You got to visit the chiropractor after the effort you put into not laughing. I mean, you live out there in the world, and these people, then you get past all that, you sit down and you have lunch with them, and they're talking about the problem in their marriage. They're talking about their concerns for their oldest daughter, for they don't know if they can make the rent, all these sorts of things. You find out there's a real human there that if you didn't religiously pharisaically exclude them from your orbit because you want to keep yourself some conceptual form of purity or whatever, you've got a person here. You got a tax collector, or you got a publican, you got a prostitute, and they really do need to be with someone that may well have some real life answers, not to everything, but to the question. And they need it. And they're excluded from it because they're outside of the microcosm that we become comfortable with. And so this thing, I guess, subconsciously Our world needs to really expand, and we need to be able to have a conversation with somebody. And I have to do this. Don't have to do it. I enjoy them. They're funny. People that are F-bombing, C-bombing, and whatever other bombing, and all the rest of it, that are abusing God, that is expressing opinions about Jesus that we find almost painful to hear. We've got to be able to just not have an expression almost, and just let that wash past and wait until the real person emerges, not and their body armor, their verbal armor, their psychological armor, their communal armor. We find a chink in it. They let it down. They lift the faceplate of their helmet, and we're able to communicate them in a way that gives opportunity for the light that we're supposed to be to happen. You know, where fear. I think I can explain it. I think the majority of Christians have a Christianized form of agoraphobia. Getting outside the walls that we find comfortable.
Yeah.
And one of the
Wow.
reasons for it is the accusations that are hurled at us if we do.
Yep.
And so I'm probably yelling, and I think I'm probably pontificating a bit, so I need to be quiet.
Well, John, I'd like to point out, I'd like to like double down on Kevin's comment. There seems to be like with the hand motion, you are making this hand motion a lot, which to me might be more of an indication that that not necessarily that you might be getting bigger, but that the perceived world in front of you is getting bigger. And I think it was in your language too. Like a lot of your language was very cosmic in its roots, where you were saying things like a microcosm. And then so like the Christian world is a microcosm, which is agoraphobic, so that there is nothing outside of it, but it's also micro and very small. And so I heard what Kevin, brought out in your hand motions, also expressed in the meaning of your language. And what I'd like to say and add to it is that there's a Stoic spiritual exercise, and for the audience, yes, the Stoics, the people from Acts 17, those people, they had a spiritual exercise that was geared towards training individuals to expand the world perspectively in front of them without having to necessarily socially leave the paradigm. So you were saying there was one of your grievances was that Derek Webb had to actually physically remove himself from this paradigm in order to actually have it expand and be able to actually see what's going on inside of it. Probably because that microcosm of Christianity did not have procedures or skills put in place to train him in order to be able to perform that kind of an expanding world perspective, cognitive psychotechnology implicit in it. And what the Stoics would do is, as part of a spiritual exercise, was they would almost treat it like going to the gym and lifting a little bit more weight, every session. And what they do is they'd close their eyes and they would imagine a perspective of themselves inside of the room they were in. And then they would say, okay, now back up your perspective to look on top of the building that you are in. And then back up your perspective to another parameter, like the city that you know yourself to be in. And then do it for the country, and then do it for the globe, and then do it for the cosmos. And if you can't, expand that perspective as much as you can, and they would do this on a regular basis. And one of the whole goals in Stoicism is to learn how to actually control the things that are truly in your control. And one of those things was the perspective that you took on a particular matter. And so if your perspectival muscles are strong enough to bear a load that goes from the small rep of your immediate perspective inside your body to the room you're in, to the building you're in, to the city you're in, and so on and so forth, then after you had done that exercise X amount of times, that you would have enough muscle mass or strength to be able to go into a highly intense situation and appropriately be able to take the perspective that was most optimal for your body to react in a way that would be able to deflate the situation or avoid a confrontation if necessary. And so that's why Stoics in popular culture will be characterized by people without emotion. And that's because they're practiced at being able to take a perspective that is outside the body, that's optimal to deal with a particular situation in a Christian manner.
Yeah, it's like a general observing a battlefield instead of a soldier in hand-to-hand combat that is on the battlefield.
It's funny that you bring that up, because Nick was talking about zooming in and out geographically, and I'm thinking zooming in and out organizationally. And I was thinking of the military, how if you're in a fire team, or you're in a squad, or you're in a platoon, or you're in a company, or you're in a battalion, or you're in a brigade, or a division, or an army, or multinational force, you know what I mean? So when you zoom out at certain levels, by time you've garnered the perspectival capacity of having been at all levels of those kinds of units, then you understand more of what's happening, and you can conduct yourself in a more appropriate and wise fashion for where you are, because you understand perspectively, higher, lower, left, right, that sort of stuff, what's going on. Wow, I really appreciate you bringing that out, Nick, of what John was saying.
So the last thing I'd add to that is, Jesus says in John 3, I think it's verse 19 or something like that, where it's that he that doeth truth cometh to the light. And I think that what Jesus is saying when he says he that doeth truth, what that means is, I'd like to take Jordan Peterson's like rendition of what truth is, or at least a way that truth presents itself. Is Jordan Peterson says that truth presents itself in layers. So there's layers of truth, right? So you can say something or point to something that is not necessarily a half truth, but it's like a part of the story. It's a perspective of the story, which is to say that that's one layer to the story. And so if we take that analogy, that truth is that which presents itself in layers, and then we take the Stoic practice of the spiritual exercise of perspectival expansion, then what we're doing is truth. We're doing truth, because you're actually engaged in an activity, a cognitive activity that's trying to move fluidly through the layers of perspective. And so to say that God is truth is to say that God is the one that seamlessly, without layers, understands the expansiveness in a given moment all the time. There is no partition between each layer. It's all within God's perspective, without any kind of hidden layer or anything like that. So in terms of
immanent domain metaphysics, this would be a practice in reaching out into the omniscient domain and bringing in. The more you do that, the more skill you have there, the more from the omniscient that you can bring into the immanent in order to achieve the transcendent. Which, so one of the reasons God is called, so one of the reasons God is called omniscient is because he is fully expanded into all things and can make anything imminent at any given moment.
Right.
Can you
I think that's
repeat
exactly
what you
right,
said?
because then the
Transcendent.
transcendent domain there is the ability to fluctuate and move through the layers. That's the
Yes.
transcendence.
Yeah,
To
that's the
transcend is
ability to do that.
to
Is
rise
yes.
through the layers. So yeah, I
Wow.
think the omniscient would be the overall parameter descriptor. The transcendent would be the moving, the changing, and the fluid manner, and then the immanent would be the actual the thing that holds it, the between of those two.
Wow.
I think that's right. I didn't think to bring in IDM into that. That
That's
sounds
good.
right,
I
though.
couldn't help but see it. John, it sounded like
Yeah.
you were asking a question a second
Well,
ago.
it's what you said about omniscience and reaching out into the omniscience and then omniscient realm of omniscience and bringing back to imminent domain. Just as you said, that's the perfect description of deep calls unto deep, or
Oh, wow.
these other aspects of digging into the Word of God as a person who believes that the scriptures are inspired, and we dig into that, we're actually reaching into the omniscient domain, because that's the source of it. We believe that that is the source of it, and we are in seeking to live, to observe, to do the Word of God. We're actually seeking to bring the instruction from the omniscient domain into the immanent domain by way of living a life that, like Jesus has asked us to live. I know we understand that with all of its differences and everything, but that's what we're trying to do, isn't it? And what
Yeah.
you said, reaching into omniscience to bring it into immanence, that's like, it's another one of those.
Yeah.
Because
So
that's what
Jordan,
happened.
Well,
Deep
I want to say
calls unto
thanks
deep.
to I want to say thanks to One Day for the super chat. Appreciate that. And then Jordan Lolosaurus Rex said playing video games has trained me in that sense, interacting with mini maps and different camera styles, etc.
yeah.
He also
Yeah,
comes
I
into
would like to double
FSI.
click on that comment, that I don't think that there's ever been a people that's been as advantaged as a modern day people to actually
Absolutely.
achieve that sort of psychotechnology of doing truth in that manner than us, because of the technologies we have, like Google Earth and in video games, where we can actually use those games as a way to understand and like map out how we might do that. And so I think that comment by Jordan or by Lorosaurus Rex is really profound. I think that's exactly right on, and it goes along with what Kevin and John were saying about the strategic, the wisdom end of being able to do that in the realm of the military or battlefields or conflict, because the military that's able to have the most optimal view of the landscape of the battlefield is put at a much greater strategic advantage, because they understand the landscape. They know where the hurdles are, because they're looking at it from this optimal view, and they're able to do that because they have the technology to be able to suss that out and whatnot.
So let's go. We got let's go to Tyron. Try to salvage. We only got 22 minutes left, so let's go to Tyron. Tyron, good to see you.
Hey everyone. See, I just had a couple points because when I was watching the video earlier today, a couple notes that I took, or things I jotted down. So like in regards to him saying that Christian music is just as liable to lie to you as any other kind of music. I can say from my experience, especially when I started getting really into like Christian rap, Christian hip hop, as I began to experience life more, like when I first became a believer, like everything was just like great and amazing, right? Like I feel like I just had like this superpower. Like
Absolutely.
I felt like I was Goku turned Super Saiyan. Like I was unstoppable. I couldn't sin. I couldn't do anything wrong. I would never get mad at people. And then as life continued to go on, I started experiencing more difficulties. I started experiencing times that I would do things wrong. And one thing that it made listening to Christian music hard to do for me was because I didn't feel as relatable. Like in Christian rap, Christian hip hop, there's like a lot of like, you almost feel like there's this, because you have a relationship with God, because the Holy Spirit is in you, you don't do anything wrong. And I'm not saying that that's exactly what they say, but it's like the impression you get from it. So when you're living a life contrary to that, it feels weird because you can't relate to the music. And that's why for me personally in my life currently right now, I know, most people wouldn't be the biggest advocates of it, but that's why I do like listening to a lot of hip hop music and rap music that's coming out currently, because a lot of the new rappers are, even though they may say some violent stuff, they are quite vulnerable about things like their mental health, them feeling lonely amongst a large multitude of people, and they may express it in a different type of way, but I feel I can relate to that.
So can I
Oh,
jump
go
on that
ahead.
just for a second, Tyron? Because I think and me and Paula talk about this a lot. It seems like a lot of Christian music is written in service to a particular set of values. And it's almost it's almost like it's rolling off a conveyor belt somewhere. Like we're going to take four chords, we're going to plug in prayer and God and Jesus and the concept of struggle, and bam, we've got a Christian music. And yet nowadays you can just cycle those concepts through Chat GPT and tell it to make it rhyme, put a neat little tune to it, and there you've got a song. But there's no beauty to it. I'm not saying there isn't any beauty to any of it, but beauty is something that causes you to realize there's something more to be seen. It helps you see something deeper. And it's almost like Christian music is a barrier rather than a lens. And it's like if somebody makes a sculpture, that could be art. But if somebody makes a sculpture of Joe Stalin because the communist regime paid them to, it's not really art. Maybe there has to be skill involved, but there's no expression of a real thing that the person saw that needs to be displayed that's coming out. They were paid to do that. Well, maybe not in a communist country, but you get the idea. But to be paid to produce something that can be marketed to people who call themselves Christians, to me, results in this simulacrum of an art form where people are incentivized not to write music that really talks to life. Now, I'm not super familiar with Hayden McCall's music, and I do kind of want to download whatever album Derek Webb just made. I haven't listened to it yet, but I want to download it and see what he's saying now, because I kind of want to. I would like the idea of Christians making music not for the sake of paying homage to the paradigm and all the stock answers, but like, what are you really going through? Let me hear about a Christian who failed at something or who's struggling with something. You know what I mean? Anyway, go go ahead, Tyron. I just wanted to jump on that for a second. Like I think I feel you with the music. Like I feel like secular musicians can actually write to what's going on in their life, and Christian musicians are kind of forced to play a little game.
Yeah, and that's why it's kind of hard, even like being in church, because there will be a shame of listening to a particular type of music, but it's hard to have a desire, like when your desire, in the moments of probably feeling in isolation or having those emotions, feeling like you can't be related to, because a lot of time in churches there is not much exposure when it's like things that are being done wrong, especially because in church there's like a weird environment to where we want to help you if you're not doing good, but there's also like, depending on what you're not doing good with, we will shame you. So like the byproduct of that is like no one will ever tell you what they're doing wrong. Like, and it makes me think about like in the book of James where it talks about because I grew up in a charismatic church and they would very often quote the book of James. I believe it's 5:16, and they would specifically quote the verse that says, the effectual fervent prayers of a righteous man availeth much.
Okay,
And they will put a big emphasis on like being holy, praying, not going out there having sex and going to the clubs. And it's like when you look at it in the entirety, before I started reading the Bible myself, I thought that was the whole verse. And then I looked at it and the scene it says, confess your faults one to another and pray for one another that you may be healed. And what I see is in churches is there's a lack of that. And if we're only talking about the effectual fervent prayers, if there's not this confession being had for those prayers to be done, there's like a lack of healing being had in those churches, you
So,
know.
I
But
want to
yeah,
jump
like
on that. Can I jump on
yeah,
that for a second too?
yeah.
Because I heard a comment recently that I think is very I forget who's it might have been on John Vervaeke's channel, but the fact that you use the word confession there, the Protestants, we don't do confession. Catholics do confession, right? And so I say we, I don't consider myself a Protestant. So, I mean, even when I was a Baptist, Baptists aren't Protestants. But it almost seems like something was lost there. And they speculated and hypothesized that perhaps today therapy is like a secularized replacement of confession. That maybe there's a good to confession. Maybe we're so against the Catholics, and I don't necessarily think that how they're doing things is like necessarily scriptural, but maybe there's something therapeutic and helpful about sharing faults with each other, and we who aren't Catholic don't do it at all. And maybe there's something to that. And so we all walk around. I think I heard you say something also, Tyron, like these other Christians are walking around like they're not doing anything bad. And so if we're supposed to be confessing our faults one to another, but everyone's walking around virtue signaling about how good of a rule following Christian they are, who are you going to relate to? You'll find yourself not being able to relate to anybody but what's categorized as worldly. So you find yourself confessing audibly to worldly music because it gets you, and the Christians anyway. That's something I want to jump on, as you were.
Oh no, yeah. I'm glad that I'm at least saying something that you feel that you can is relatable. But yeah, I also wanted to say, just in context, in the general sense of things being Christian. Well, I was going to make one last point about the music. In the type of church that I was in, you would hear a lot of music that would basically have a concept to where how you quote unquote praise God will have like a direct correlation to what you get in life, right? Like there's a song, Tasha Cobbs. I liked a lot of Tasha Cobbs music, but it's like there's a miracle in this room with my name on it. There's a healing in this room and it's here for me. There's a breakthrough in this room. And basically she says, so I'm going to put a praise on it. And so like the whole purpose of the song and the way people usually sing it is like do all these different dances, shout, praise God, and there's this direct correlation to what you're going to get. And even my struggle with things like that is that it puts you into a false reality, which is kind of like me connecting to like the whole Christian things being able to lie. Because then you'll be in a perception, have a mindset that because I shouted hard during service, because I fell out, like these particular things that I'm trying to work on in my life, like being slow to anger, will be fixed. When sometimes you have to actually work on things and learn things, maybe through cognitive behavior therapy, learn more about psychology, philosophy, learn about stoicism, whatever it takes. But it's like you get put in this place where it's like you think these things are going to get fixed, and you're in this continuous cycle of failing in these different areas because you're not actually getting the tools to equip you to fix your actual problems and become a better person. You know, so I think that is something that is so true. And I just want to say this last part, because he mentioned something about many black sheep aren't the lost. They are many black sheep aren't lost. They are just pioneers. He said that later in the video.
Yeah, we hadn't got to that part of the video yet, but you can go ahead and bring it up. Just
Okay,
because at the
yeah.
beginning, I think you came in a couple minutes late, but yeah, go ahead. Go ahead and say it.
Yeah, so with that, it kind of made me think because I feel that the thing is with church, I think the thing is that there are a lot of people who are very dissatisfied in church. There are a lot of people who are experiencing things in church and would like other places to go, would like other things to experience that would give them fulfillment. And they talked about this in the video as well. It's like, but there really kind of isn't anywhere to go, right? A lot of people, they don't have a very good support system with their family, some people, their friends. So it's like, if you disassociate yourself from church or become or act as your authentic self, you then fall victim to being isolated completely. So it's like, I'll just settle for this. And it just makes me think about like how serious, like a lot of us who have different levels of insight and have some sense of wanting to be a pioneer, having innovative thoughts, like the importance and need for us to be vocal, because you have so many people who feel the same way, but just they don't know what to do about it. And I think the more certain people speak up and say certain things, you know, you'll find out that there are a lot of people that are just like you know, and even you talked about like Protestants, like the quote unquote Protestant. I know there's like a virtue to like, oh, Protestants, we protested, we stood for what was right. And I guess the question is, there was a, you know, imperfect human being, flawed in his perception and everything, that started the whole thing of we're Protestants. So where do we get the idea that there is now no more need to protest or deconstruct
or correct things? Yeah.
Yeah, like where do we get that now everything is all perfect? I don't know where that comes from. So
yeah, we should be like ongoingly committed to ongoing correction.
Yeah.
Ongoing self-correction. So, a verse
That's
came
really
to
good.
my mind when you were talking about like stoicism. So like I have no problem with what you said, but I can hear, I can prehend the comments that are going to be coming about from some folks in the audience, because they think reality is divided up into different domains. Like there's psychological domain, and there's a philosophical domain, and then there's a, you know, a stoic domain, and we have the ability to stay out of them. Like there's a part of your kitchen that has stoicism in it and you have to stay away from it. Something like that. But Psalm 8, 3-4 says, "When I consider thy heavens, the work of thy fingers, the moon and the stars, which thou hast ordained, what is man that thou art mindful of him, and the son of man that thou visitest him?" So there is this, you know, way older than Stoicism, the idea of considering these things on a far out zoomed scale, and then how minuscule am I compared to that? That predates Stoicism. Stoicism is just people bringing intentionality to that same thing that David was doing.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Can I just say one last thing?
Go for it. You still got your hand up. Nobody else does.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. I just kind of lost my train of thought because I know we were like going back and forth. Okay, I just remember. So I was going to say something about, there's this book I read, and when I read it, I was kind of more so specifically thinking about business, because I think that's like what the book is about. It's called The Compound Effect. And what it talks about is like how a lot of people are trying to be like, achieve to be like the 1% in a particular type of thing, right? Rather that be like wanting to be in the NBA, wanting to be, you know, a professional boxer or whatever it is. And he talked about just like how difficult it is, and how much more time you have to spend to go from being a part of the top 20 percentile to one, that it's so crazy, and the
And to go
likeliness and
from 0 to
probability
20.
of it happening. Yeah, so what he recommended is, which the book is about, is trying to take skills in a multitude of areas, or knowledge and wisdom in a multitude of areas, and just trying your best to achieve which is more easily achievable, to be a part of the 20 percentile and compound them together and create something new and innovative. And I can say with my life, like, I've realized that I've become a better Christian by taking knowledge and wisdom from places outside of just strictly Christian books or the Bible. You know, like when I listen to rap music,
Yes.
a lot of the rappers, they help me learn a lot of the problems that are very oftenly cultural, and to understanding the depths and struggles that some of these people go through. And then I listen to a guy like Dr. K to understand some of the inner the deeper foundations of why they do the things they do, you know, him from his perspective as a therapist, and even, you know, his insight that he talks about through like yoga and Buddhism. And then so like I'll just take the multiple different things from the different areas, and then I'll compile them together, and I'll realize it'll help me be more effective in like understanding people or relating to people. So yeah, I just feel like if we don't do that, we limit how good we can be or effective we can be as believers.
So Solomon, he's called the preacher, and in Hebrew, the word for preacher means the gatherer. And so what he did is exactly what you're talking about, is instead of just looking inside some ideological echo chamber somewhere and just getting ideas from there, Solomon, the wisest man in the world, on earth, gathered whatever he could observe under the sun. And it goes back to that word observe that John brought up, with that expansion to you get bigger and you realize that the world gets bigger to you as you observe. So like when you're going to secular music, what's called secular music, you're the Christian, right? You can Christianize whatever you encounter. So if you're listening to rap and hip hop and that's what you're observing, and that's where you're discovering both problems and the causes of those problems that we should be addressing, I think that's exactly what we should be doing.
This is probably going to sound a little bizarre, but as I sat here and listened to this whole conversation, something just kept in the back of my mind, and it may be how I view idolatry. So this may sound a little bit out there, but listening to Nick and to Kevin talk about doing truth and verbing and nouning, it seems like unless we can develop practices that help us to do truth and help us to verb instead of noun, and then to really learn how to see the beauty, I feel like we're kind of at risk in creating an idol out of our own Christianity.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that may
Yep.
not make sense, but
Yeah.
I
No,
just,
it makes
Isn't that
perfect
interesting,
sense.
Nick, how I texted you with that earlier?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is, and I've been thinking about that, and I think the reason
I
why
just texted that to
Roberta,
Nick earlier, Roberta.
yeah, I
pardon
think
me,
one of the reasons
I didn't hear
Kevin
what you said,
texted
Kevin.
me.
Oh, I said what you just said. I just texted basically that to Nick earlier today.
Yeah.
Okay.
And one of the reasons why that makes so much sense, Roberta, I think, is because with the verbing and the nouning, and you pointing out that it seems like the nouning has a tendency to become an idol. The reason that I think that that's the case is because an idol is, in some ways almost like a double entendre, where it's idle, like it's still, it doesn't move. And what a verb is at its root is a thing that moves. It has whenever you have a verb, you have this sense of movement or change. So to understand the fundamentals of those, the fundamentals of grammar, a noun is something that is static. It can only just stay still. It has no inherent spirit in it. And that's why I think the term idol is such a good and powerful way to describe what we have a tendency to kind of gravitate towards, and why there is such a push or an initiative here to verb things, to do truth. Don't think of truth as as like a noun. Think of truth as a verb, because then it has a movement to it. And, biblically speaking, we've been saying this for years now. The first thing something that has spirit, the first thing that the Spirit of God does in the Bible is move. And so that's kind of like the little light switch, or the little shift that we need to make in terms of the modality in which we're interacting or we're perceiving the world, or that we're even speaking and paying attention to our language. Is, am I speaking in a way that's indicating that there's movement to my thoughts, there's movement to my growth, there's movement to my conceptions and ideas about things, and not these static impotent kind of idols and stuff like that. So that makes perfect sense to me.
So I want to dive in just real quick. I want to dive into this comment, unless you had another. Well, yeah, let me dive into this comment that I told Nick earlier. I was actually listening to Leighton Flowers earlier today, and the idolatry of what I was hearing just overwhelmed me. You know, I couldn't imagine. I couldn't believe how much in Jumanji land I was while listening to this, and so it occurred to me that when, like, we as Baptists, we always railed against the Catholics because they're committing idolatry. And I think that if you have what you might call magical thinking people, like what Fowler would call stage 2, or what Spiral Dynamics would call purple or red or beige, they might actually think there is some kind of magic in the statue. But in our current era, in our society, everybody's basically I'm letting Jim back in. Everybody's basically orange green in our current society, which means that most scientifically minded people, nobody thinks that the statues are real or that they have any magic in them, which would mean that everybody who's going to a Catholic church, they recognize that the image that they're looking at is just a symbol that they must move beyond. And I put that word in there on very intentionally. They must move beyond. So, like, if I see this picture of like Mary with Jesus' body draped over her, you know, if I see this statue of this, like, that's pointing to something that I must, in the transcendent realm, that I must move to embody somehow. And so there's an implied movement there. Now, when I take that icon away and I put in my head a bunch of, you know, beliefs about it, right? It's a lot easier for me to make that an idol because it's static, it's still, you know, the homonym idol and idol, it's static, it's still, and I can, like, the statue is obviously fake. That's not really Mary, that's not really Jesus. It's pointing to something. What's it pointing at? I have to ask that question when I see that statue. But when I have the beliefs in my head and they're static and they don't move, it's a lot easier to stop there, be static, and just worship that as God. I got these beliefs. I've got this model of God. Now I'm worshiping that. So I think we who are, you know, Baptist or iconoclasts, basically, we're committing more idolatry than today's Catholics are. Today's Catholics know to move beyond these symbols, and we're so dumb as Baptists, you know, my background is Baptist, that we don't know to move beyond the images in our head. We made an image of God in our head, and we're committing idolatry to it every day because we have no dynamism, we have no movement, we have no verbing, and we're stuck, and we're committing idolatry. Anyway.
That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make sure we conform to him. But even with best of intention, we end up making God conform to us. You hear people talking all the time, creating God in our image instead of us being created in his. And
like, you know how a water puddle will take up the shape of the ground that it's on?
Yeah.
Your head is like that, and the ideology will come in and fill in the empty spaces in your head. Same way water does on a pavement or ground.
Yeah.
We'll make it our image.
It makes it easy. And the more water that gets in there, the shape changes. You know, there is a puddle in the car park that of a place I go to, and I notice it changes as it gets full. We've just had 2 days of rain, and what it looks like it is a little bit more influx of material, and it keeps morphing all the time, and nothing that you see reveals what it truly is. It's the same with us, with the Lord, with how you're talking. You know, I know you. I'm an ex-Catholic. Our family is more Catholic than the Pope, and we Flamwell. We had the local cathedral here, and they had a crypt, and our family, there were statues at the front, Mary and Joseph, or Mary and Saint Jared Magella, or one of them dudes, and it was donated by the McCallan family. We really were that nuts. Not nuts. That's not right. They were sincere, but. I've been in a lot of other countries. Well, they were, you know, they operated at the extremes of what they understood, which, you know, and they did not have any freedom afforded to them to go beyond it. because they were told to go beyond the parameters set for them, was to venture into trepidatious territory that you're in. There's all sorts of dangers, but this one's been a lot of countries. I would go to animist festivals, pagan festivals. I've sat and spent many, many hours talking with Buddhist monks right at the foot of the Shwedagon Pagoda in Burma, or different things. I'm not trying to talk about what I've done, but my experience is that almost none of them, of whatever they are, mostly animists, they don't believe that their idols are gods either. But those idols are a place for them to summon their god to, so that they can geolocate their deity in order to interact. That's what happens, right? And so we end up with something like, transubstantiation in the Catholic Church, which has its origins in Greek, in alchemy in Greek, right? And so it geolocates momentarily God.
Yeah, and what Kevin's saying is that's what Protestants or Baptists are doing with words. Is that they're allowing the words to summon the God of morality to geolocate in the word and then say it out to the congregation so that everybody worships the word. That's why they have that's what they call a liturgy.
We end up doing that with, that's true. We end up doing it with worship. Let's slow this song down from 80 beats. Let's slow it down to 64. We'll close our eyes when we sing it, and maybe God will turn up in the meeting. Like, we have a manifest presence. I tell you, I'm not against the Lord turning up in the meeting, but that is an attempt to geolocate in some it's an externalized sense, because what Luke 17:3, the kingdom of God's within you, the Holy Spirit dwells within us. What? No, you're not. You're the temple of the Holy Spirit. There's a very real sense in which God has condescended toward us, and in a way is geolocated, but he's indwelling us. There is a sense of that, and I'm getting off topic. I need to shut up.
So like transubstantiation in a Catholic liturgy, it sounds like you just drew a similarity between that and a song service in a mega church that might use key modulations to increase. Like
I did intentionally,
and I think that's so beautiful. I think that's amazing. I never thought about it that way before. To geolocate God in a particular thing.
Yeah. It's usually in a genre or a style. It's in a do you remember where all the female song leaders had to wear jackets down to their shins, or wherever it was, or in the big churches, they're all wearing the same style of clothing. I mean, there's all sorts of things, or we've got to darken our auditoriums. We have to turn the lights down. What are we doing this for?
Yeah.
There's a goal in mind that we would, we're turning where the contemporary church has turned their auditoriums, their places of worship, many of them, into something akin to the St. Peter's Basilica or some other place, which is full of things intended to draw a person upward spiritually or to keep them under control, depending what the purpose is. We've turned our auditoriums into that. How do you know that we're about to start church? Well, there's a countdown on the screen and the lights are dimmed. And we're going to have the formulaic quick song followed by slow songs. We call quick songs praise. We call slow songs worship. And on it goes. But it's all part of it.
That's the whole idea of using that kind of thing to geolocate God is amazing to me.
Yeah, John, that was really helpful, because as I've been studying through some meditation stuff and going through different areas with that, you bringing up that point of geolocation, I was seeing that pattern in some of the things that I was studying and bumping into. So thank you. You give me words to that.
Yeah, praise the Lord.
We have Tyron, you still have your hand up. I don't know if you intend to or if, okay.
Oh,
Jim,
I'm sorry. No.
did you freeze Jim? Jim might have froze. So Jim had a little
He's
issue
being very
earlier.
stoic.
Well, he dropped out earlier. I think he's having connectivity problems. Oh, there you
There
go.
he
I'm sorry. Am I
There
back?
you go. Yeah, I think you're back. I can see you and hear you. And you just froze again. We need somebody who can interpret a freeze.
Am I
Jim
back?
came alive and froze again.
You're coming back and you're freezing pretty regularly.
Captain America?
Who's Captain America? I just had to
What was
let
it?
yeah. I just had to let Jim in a few minutes ago. He dropped out by accident. I think he lost connectivity. Had to let him back in, so I think he's out.
So in the meantime, if I could, I know we got to go, but John, if you wouldn't mind, you were saying something about how this helped you, or John, the other John's words had helped you get over a hurdle inside of meditation through the language of geolocating a divinity or God or something.
Yeah.
Would you mind sharing, kind of like, or trying to picture
As
that out?
as I was, it's kind of interesting because it does tie in somewhat in the sense of you can take this word meditation and you can add the nouning, biblical, Christian, secular. You could go a ton of different ways with it. CIA, whatever. Go wherever you want with it. But as I was kind of working through it and trying to find, hey, the wise path through there. What is all of this? One of the things that hit me was the motivations. What's the motivations behind wanting to meditate?
Oh,
What is the
okay.
motivation? Like even in this case, what's the motivation of using even the word Christian to describe a bookstore or the music you listen to? Like, what are you communicating in those words, or what are you seeking? And when you use that word geolocate, I could see it, like I could see that as being a motivation for maybe the emotion of loneliness or relationship or attachment or
Hmm.
I don't know. That's a good question, Nick. It was, but I was seeing something along this lines of the geolocation where, like, are you trying to bring something to you?
Like a sense of, like, maybe a sense of security.
Sense of security, a sense of maybe belonging, a sense of
So like we've said in in other FSI sessions in regard to meditation, that meditation, as far as I know, is meant to be an actual exercise.
yeah,
So a lot of people think that meditation is supposed to be this like relaxing time to like alleviate anxiety and gain a sense of security and at one with the world, and like
yep,
I'm gonna get back to my center and find peace or something like that.
yep,
And I think we've drawn out that actually, if you are truly meditating, then there's going to be this exertion, this exercise, this effort that
mhm,
is supposed to put you in a place of uncomfortability. And so how that relates to um what you might be seeing with the motivation behind
yep,
why you would meditate is that if you are meditating with the intention of geolocating a sense of security
exactly,
or a sense of like um reduced anxiety or centering towards
yep,
yourself, that's almost like antithetical to what the exercise is supposed
yes.
to do,
Yeah,
right?
and that's why I said when he said that geolocating, it made some of these patterns that I was seeing and how different people were meditating kind of click into a group, like a taxonomy, a category.
Yeah.
And then obviously I'm just thinking through the IDF or the domain stuff and how that was playing out there. But that's where that was helpful, that geolocation kind of, I was seeing that pattern in some of the meditative efforts by some groups.
Mm.
And so it gave me okay, that helped me kind of say, okay, I can now kind of I can navigate this a little bit better now as to what is truly being communicated by them and in this. What are they seeking? What's the motivations behind it? So
yeah, I want to jump on the whole meditation thing for a second, because there's certain capacities that for which there are no formula, but if Jesus said, if you seek, you will find. So it's like, I told this story before, but when my daughter was looking for a job, she had applied at a bunch of different places. And then we went to eat dinner at Olive Garden. She had not applied at Olive Garden, but it just so happened while we were sitting there, they overheard us talking about the fact that she had applied to a bunch of different jobs. And they came up to her and they're like, we're looking for people. So she got a job at Olive Garden. And it's weird because there's not like a formula for how to have done that. All of her work put into trying to find a job did not get her a job. But if she had not had done that work, she would not have gotten that job. Does that make sense? So there's certain, like, it's weird because there are certain capacities and awarenesses that you can have that you don't know what to aim for. So you can't direct your meditation because you haven't transcended to the ability to do the thing, or to hear the thing, or to see the thing. But the chances of it occurring are much more likely if you are attempting rather than if you don't. It's hard to explain.
But have you noticed a lot with just worship, things of that nature? Or let's go back to having whatever your concept is of the Lord turning up on a meeting, whether everyone's fallen over or there's some sort of mist or cloud, or everyone just has a sense of they're awestruck or silence, whatever it is. People look at certain things in the Bible and they'll go, well, we're going to do that. So we're going to sing the high praises of God. We're going to blow loud on the trumpets or the guitars or drums. They never look at Solomon slaughtering thousands of animals in a day in order for the presence of God to turn up in a temple. Or they never have a go at threshing wheat, or like Gideon did behind a wine press, or these other things. We're talking about taking a formulaic approach to wanting to achieve an outcome, like John was saying, geolocation of God, or the presence of the Lord, or however we talk about it. There's so many. Or what about Manoah and God just sort of turns up and has a chat, then disappears in the smoke. Well, let's have we should expect God to turn up at our barbecues, but not at our electric barbecues, because there's no smoke unless we burn the meat. So God can turn up when we have a regular barbecue with a fire, and you could go on ad absurdum with it.
Yeah.
And
which aspect do we highlight? It's combinatorial explosive.
I think there might be one aspect we could highlight, not of that, but he says, knock, ask and it shall be given you, seek and you shall find, knock, it will be open. There is something about pursuing him. And for me, in my interaction with you guys and what I've benefited from my 2.5 years of following the channel and a couple of months of interaction, I'm not here to become some propeller head, some intellectual. I'm here because I'm pursuing God.
Yes.
And my life is being affected by finding people of like mind who are wanting to understand how to think expansively. I'm not afraid to dial in to nanoscopic level on something, but realize understanding something on a nano level doesn't mean that you got to come back out into the macro world to use it. you know what to do genetically, but you got to come into the macro world and introduce it through a syringe or something. You got to in and out. I like that about this community and the fact that we got a lot of different people here thinking. Everyone's thinking differently. What Tyron said before about the music, it set my brain off on a whole other thing. you know, and you have realizations of things that but in something like this, you can articulate them. They're brought to light, and they have more power, I think, when you have an unrecognized thought that you eventually are able to articulate. I think it has more power in my life. It changes you. So
yeah, I think the theme kind of goes along with in terms of like the intentionality, the type of intentionality that you're bringing to meditation or to an intellectual endeavor or something, or a spiritual exercise or something, comes down to like two maxims. One is said by Yoda in The Empire Strikes Back. He's like Luke is going to go intentionally try and use the Force to extract the X-Wing or something like that out of the lake. And Yoda goes, there is no try, do or do not. And that goes along with the maxim from Forrest Landry, which is to merely search for meaning is to find it. So if you put those two maxims together, it reveals that, like with Jesus in the seek and ye shall find. So like the mere act of searching for a job is to find the job based on the intentionality that you bring to. So there is no trying. Like the harder you try to take the X-Wing out of the lake, or the harder you try to get a job, is to almost bring the incorrect intentionality to the act of the thing in the first place, and it is not to find it. If you understand like the pairing of those two maxims. So in our intentionality with coming together like this, it's like we can't try to focus so hard on chanting the words and saying the right things in order to bring the presence of God here. The act of coming together with the intention of connecting is to manifest the presence of God, where two or three are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst thereof. It's in the mode or in the intention of gathering in the first place is to bring the logos to the fore.
So I want to jump on that, Nick, because and then I want to, after I say this, I want to see if Jim's connectivity is good enough for him to say what he was going to say. So where two or three are gathered, there am I in the midst. So when you and I are talking, when a husband and wife are talking, there's like a third there. And something I've been exploring recently is that it's possible for the third to have a shadow. Okay. So if you have a husband and wife, and let's say that one of them is being unfaithful and not sharing that with the other, that creates a gap in the integrity that the third can have. You see? So there's a lack of relationality that can exist because something is being held back. So when we go to church, like in order for me to relate to you, I have to really be me and you have to really be you. But if I'm being this, you see, and you're being, the same thing back to me, if we're both pretending to be this, like back at Alana's church, they're all being Mr. Good Calvinist. Nobody's really sharing the them that's them. And so whatever kind of third could possibly be created between them is like 100% shadow, because nobody is sharing anything authentic. They're just they're creating a fake, like a puppet. The third is a puppet. The third isn't the real boy.
So the theme is don't become the Phantom of the Opera and show up like the Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah, well, I wanted to cover my whole face, but but the idea is not you. You see, if I go to a Calvinist church, I'm not talking to a person. I'm talking to a recapitulation of Theodore Beza or John Calvin.
Mm,
I'm not really talking
Mhm.
to a person.
that's really
And
good.
so if I really want that, where two or three are gathered, there am I in the midst. So it's almost like the paradigms that we follow are, it's almost like they're designed by Satan to hold back who we are so that we can't manifest Christ between us.
We end up being acolytes. And
Yes.
by definition, an acolyte virtually has no personality and only has a presence which is useful to those toward whom they give their allegiance. They have a
Yeah.
they have their usefulness is defined by their behavior in that group. And if you don't acquiesce to the group think, to that which is expected in a prescriptive way, if you don't acquiesce to that, then your usefulness is diminished. And like you were talking with Alana L and others that I've seen, and what I've experienced in my life, I have no Calvinist background. I have another background might share one day, but my journey out of where I was, I'm not talking about the Catholic Church, to where I am, meant that my history is strewn with people who have discarded me because my brain cells started bumping into one another and discovering none of them were on their own, and you begin to think well, and you realize you are, to some extent or another, an acolyte. And I don't think Jesus said, go ye into all the world and make acolytes.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's something which I always think of. I'm sorry, I really like, Conan the Barbarian, I don't know if you remember Thulsa Doom, as James Earl Jones is there and he's got all of his acolytes up around the cliff, and he's demonstrating to Conan what real power is, and he flicks his finger in the air and points and looks at one, and the acolyte just falls forward off the cliff to their death, and he tells Conan that's real power. And I think that a lot, I've got to be careful where I go with this, but a lot of leadership, a lot of influence is designed to see what responses they get when they look and raise a finger from the people. And when we feel that we must respond to a raised finger, or we are no longer part of that complex of individuals, if we don't do it, we've really got a problem, and I think there's a lot of Pastor Thulsit Dooms out there, and not just pastors.
Amen.
A lot of other people too that have some sort of influence or position, and they need to have it. And Christian businessmen run a Christian business. Oh, I'm a Christian businessman, do business with me if you're a Christian, because I'm a Christian businessman. But their business is, well, it's not running away that has the thoughts of other people involved with it, just one person at the top of the tree.
Is Jim, is your connectivity back? I know you said you were having some power issues and internet issues.
Well, I'll start talking and see if divine providence intervenes.
So
But-
yeah, we have in the chat we have divine dissidents, so maybe they can work together. Opponent processing there. So yeah,
nothing profound, but something that kept popping into my head as John was speaking, and then again when Tyrone was speaking, was the old Petra song, "Rose-Colored Stained Glass Windows."
Huh.
And seeing the world through rose-colored stained glass windows, never allowing the world to come in, seeing no evil and feeling no pain. And then that's when John was talking about just not seeing other people's pain because you keep them away. You don't let them in. And then just now when you were speaking and holding systematic theology up in front of your face and talking about, speaking to people, only relating to them on that level, that gave me a little bit of a flashback to my Amway distributorship days, because that's how they related to each other.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Actually, the other one thing I wanted to mention off the back of what Tyrone was talking about too, about the words and the content of contemporary songs and everything, and then Kevin was saying that there's like an absence of real truth telling in the songs. It made me think of guys like Larry Norman and Randy Stonehill and those dudes who were pariahs amongst Christians, but I wasn't a Christian. I was a rebellious Catholic kid, but I couldn't get enough of Larry Norman's music, right? And it was because of the content, because of what the songs were about, you know. But there was a compass within them somehow or another, which you could choose to navigate by, and music that was considered only appropriate outside the walls of the church for quite a long time, that was not insignificant in my heart, eventually softening years later toward the things of God. I'd remember words from songs, and God would, you know, I think it was the Lord would use those sorts of things to help draw me, to soften me, to chip away at the edges of my peanut brain, you know, and my hardened heart. So I just wanted to mention that they are out there. Keith Green, I mean,
Yeah.
those guys put their heart to music, you know, in a way that I found, at least I found very relatable, you know. Praise the Lord.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that the specific song you brought up, Jim. I was looking up the lyrics about because I'm not familiar with that song. We were so Baptist, we weren't allowed to listen to Petra.
The song opens up with an organ playing Showers of Blessing, and then it morphs into an acoustic opening, and then it jams. It jams really hard.
So the church who was supposed to be helping is blinded itself to what it should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle's hand went up and down a couple times. You got anything you want to tag on the end here before we break for lunch?
There's just been so many things. I can't abbreviate it all. One movie that did come to mind that might be, so Roberta was saying it might be helpful to have examples of how to do at some point. And it reminded me of a movie that had an impression on me many years ago when it first came out, and still periodically has different impressions on me each time I watch it. And that's the movie Ragamuffin. I don't know if anybody's seen it, but it's about
My mom used to call me that all the time.
Yeah, it's about
God is an awesome God.
Yeah, it's Rich Mullins wasn't really a recording artist that fit the contemporary Christian music model. And so some of the story is what they wanted him to be as a recording artist, and then what he needed to be himself. So Kevin was talking about Alana's and you know, her story's just most salient because it was recent. But we've heard a lot of stories similar where, you know, you go to a church and they expect you to echo what the pastor's saying, or maybe echo what the approved reading material is, or echo what the song set list is for Sunday worship. Like, those are the approved, appropriate lanes in which to conduct yourself. And to go outside that or question is inappropriate. It actually goes later in that video with Derek Webb. He says something about questioning, and why would there be ever a problem with questioning? And I thought, if what you're telling people is true, truth should fear no question. And so now what you maybe wonder is, well, what is the fear of the question that isn't allowed? So if you're in a church and your pastor is not letting you question something, what are they afraid of? Are they afraid of being seen in a light that is actually contrary to Scripture? Are they going to be seen as the people that are putting up the don't swim past this buoy because everything past this buoy is dangerous and you've just entered safety. Why would you ever want to leave this safety? Trust us, this is what's best for you. When maybe past that buoy is actually a little more truth than you would have ever bargained for. So I don't know. When I think it was John earlier, he said something, and John, I'm not trying to nitpick you. You had said something like it's a shame that he, meaning Derek Webb, had to go so far away to get a picture of this truth. And I wondered, maybe kind of in a juxtaposition way, maybe there wasn't truth where he was.
Oh,
And thank God he had courage to go out past the buoy.
Yeah.
And maybe this trajectory of his is actually taking him closer to truth the entire each new step of the way. Now, I think I know what you're saying. It's shame that maybe some of the costs along the way had to be made manifest or whatever. But so I agree with, I think, where your heart was when you said that. It just dawned on me, maybe a slight pivot. Like maybe we're assuming he was close to some truth.
And you're right. I mean, I didn't want to talk about the rest of the recording because you've only gotten the first 14 seconds or something.
Right.
But I think I pick up pretty strongly from statements he makes. If he, and I know nothing about the dude except the recording, if he wasn't a Calvinist, then I'm a bookmark. Like if he wasn't a Calvinist, I'm sure that he was. From what
Oh
I've
yeah,
heard,
he's famous for having left
he is
Calvinistic Christian. Yeah,
okay.
we've played his videos on here before. We've
I don't
Leighton has
remember him.
played his videos where
Okay, I've watched. Maybe I just not. It didn't make an impression on me. I don't know. I've watched hundreds of you guys' videos, but in any case, yeah. My thought was even. I was saying that with one ear on my head telling me, well, I think he was Calvinist. It is tragic that any of us or anybody is raised in a home which is in quotes. I know a house can't be Christian, a home can, but in a house where the people within it subscribe to being Christians. It's a shame when our experience is so unrelatable, really, to the true God and these other things. And I guess whether or not he was, let me just use a religious phrase, whether or not he was at one time walking in the light or he wasn't, the fact that he spent so much of his life in a situation where he's being told that he was, where he thought that he was, by the sound of it, and having moved away from that, getting perspective. And as I mentioned, hopefully what Proverbs says about it being raising up a child, I was hopeful that there was enough of the real truth in his early days that he will do that take that circular path and return to not where he was, but to the God that where he was subscribed to in some way. But I'm not trying to. I take your point though to really understand what you're being called.
I want to give you a concept that we use in the military, and it's the word bang. And in the military, we'll talk about things if something on the calendar, we'll talk about calendars visually a lot. And if we say move something to the left, it means move it to the back in the past. If it's going to be on the 27th of March, now we're going to move it to the 25th of March. If it's going to be on the 15th of April, we'll move it to the left back to the 10th of April. If we move it to the right, maybe we'll move it to the 20th, right? Well, then when significant events happen, sometimes it's referred to as bang. And if everything like D-Day might be bang, right? And then you'll refer to things as left of bang and right of bang. Make sense?
Plus,
or
minus.
like say the big bomb hits your assembly area in your infantry platoon, and then everything's scrambling. And then when you're writing in the report back to higher, you'd be like, left of bang, we were doing this, this, and this. Right of bang, we were doing this, this, and this. Let's say that bang is whatever caused. Let's say that Derek Webb, for what, let's just say he winds up being the most fervent Christian ever, okay? But bang is when he left the kind of Christianity that wasn't real Christianity, which
left the
needed to
compound.
happen.
Yeah, he left the compound.
I think that most people who call themselves Christians are left of bang.
Wow.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I'm talking about all the people who run all the channels that we're all friends with. I think they're all left of bang.
That's interesting.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I also thought I couldn't help but identify what I thought was a terrific amount of second half of life activity going on with him, you know.
Yeah.
And now that I don't know, I'm not far from the oldest one in this particular group, and flipping at 62 years, you realize how many of them disappearing. You haven't got a clue what's going on. But the whole time you thought you did. So you younger ones, thank God for being amongst a group where you can dodge a few of those things.
Well, somebody mentioned Groundhog Day in the comments, and you know, Groundhog Day is a fun movie, but Groundhog Day is the ideologically possessed person who can't stop being Pinocchio.
It's fantastic.
And you just keep, we all know people like this. They just keep living, they just keep going through those same motions over and over and over again. And they're never going to leave out. And but the difference though in the movie, the guy wants it to end. And when people are stuck in this repetitive life that isn't going anywhere, they think it's great. That's the difference. Anyway, we got to end this. We're late. Any last comments before we go? Any 10-second comments before we go?
You know, Kyle, you used the word dangerous. I caught myself using that word too, and we hear it from other parties. I'm wondering if the word that we're trying to use is powerful. You know, because when something's powerful, it can be dangerous, but it can be useful too.
So that video you sent me, Nick, with Jordan Peterson talking to John Vervaeke, he mentioned, Jordan Peterson said, and that's dangerous, but everything's dangerous. Like, so yeah, so powerful might be a better word.
So so I like dangerous. Maybe that's just my personal preference because I like the conundrum of shattering the status quo. Like, it's dangerous to that. Like, what I'm about to do is not necessarily dangerous for me in the grand scheme of things. It's dangerous to the past, kind of like
or to the pastor who doesn't want you to rock the boat.
Well, that, and you ever get to a point where like you see something that you can't unsee, and you don't want to go back to it because you know too much now. Like,
yeah.
So this future is dangerous in the way that I'm going to see things I can't unsee, and that's for my benefit. I will never want to go back there.
Yeah, like Derek Webb can never go back to left of bang.
Correct.
He can never go back there.
Yeah.
It's done. And people who we would call evangelicals and friends and all this and all the debates we just went to, everybody on both sides of all that, they're all left of bang, and they all think that where they are is where Christians need to be. Once you've seen past, once you've been right of bang, you can't go back.
Need to put left of bang, right of bang into the glossary, mate.
What's that?
You need a BTF glossary and a BTF lexicon so people understand how this group uses words, because there is a certain esoteric nature to the interaction. There is a certain not privileged but singular. There's a group of concepts you need to be able to have a hold of in order to interact well and not be afraid that you're listening to something that's dangerous.
That's right.
Because
we have our own cultural cognitive grammar, as John Vervaeke would call it. Yeah.
Nomenclature.
And we've got the whole misinformation thing now, this contemporary phenomena of everybody being the truth police and everything else. And they're trying to control ideas. And, the communists would tell you that ideas are the most dangerous things. So there's certain ideas they wanted their populace to subscribe to, and all the rest they forbade. And
Yeah.
a forbidden idea is really attractive. It's like telling a teenager, don't sneak out your window at night and go and meet that girl and have a kiss. Don't do that, whatever you do, So dangerous is a great word, but it depends where you stand. A parent might view that as dangerous, but they're actually loving the child and trying to help them somewhere, but they still see a danger. But the child says, Mum says it's dangerous, but what do I care? I'm going out there. So we need to be maybe more childlike. Sorry, Mum.
All right. Any other comments? You got to get off your chest before we go.
I wanted to just say something that as a question that possibly could be something to do. I was wondering, like, what about because I just feel like just thinking about as Christians how like we kind of have grown up with like these specified things in this hierarchy of the things that are most important and most prevalent in helping you become a better Christian, so on and so forth. And I know like we all have different perspectives of things that we do, and I just thought rather it be like in Discord or even like in a discussion, like having a conversation where like each individual may be able to share things that for them they feel rather draw them closer to God, help them learn more about God, help them become a better person. Like some people they talk about meditation, some people they talk about music. Me, I may have particular things, and just I feel like an opportunity to glean and learn from other people and try to participate in some of those things and see what they do for us. And then I guess also in the sense of like looking at just in the sense of the local church, if we possibly maybe would do something just like with questioning the things that are being done, because as the church say the things have to be done. Like I just use this as a example, how the prominence is given to, like, say if a church has service on Sunday, Bible study on Thursday. It's like the obligation is to come to church where the pastor is preaching on Sunday, but Thursday is like almost like a treat, an additive, if you can, a supplemental. But like, should we question like which one of those should potentially be more important or supplemental? I was just wondering about both of those two things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
think we should probably come up with a recommended ecology of practices. And
Derek
what we're doing here tonight
mention-
is one of them. What's that, Dan?
Derek did mention a thing just after the point Carl spoke on. I made a couple of notes on it because I was just listening to find it easier. And he made a comment saying that his unhappiest and meanest period of his life was when he was caught up in the dogmatic intellectual Christianity.
Yeah.
And I thought that was like quite profound, really. And he reminded me, like, as I was sort of listening to him and thinking, all right, let me try and separate from what it is he's talking about and just try and get the flow of what I'm feeling from him and what he's saying. And he just sounded very similar to people I've met who've come out of oppressive relationships or narcissistic abuse, or drug addiction, or whatever it might be, a bad time in their life. And I can remember seeing an interview with him before. I think he was sat with a guy in a church, and it was more kind of about him leaving Calvinism, and it was a lot lower energy. It was very sort of the guy banging on about Calvinism and him saying why he wasn't a Calvinist anymore. And the energy was a lot lower. And the one I got from him today was kind of like when you see someone a few years after they've broke free and they've now found a new life and they've got new passions. Wow. And he was kind of saying about he doesn't care anymore what people believe in. He's more interested in what you're doing with it.
Yeah.
And are you nice to be around? And is there a charitable side of you, or is it just noise? And,
I think that's right around like the 24, 25 minute mark.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good stuff
fantastic.
later
I found it so interesting to listen to. Absolutely inspiring. Really, really enjoyed listening to him. Anyway, that's it. Just
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. We've been using, we've been referring to Derek Webb as like a punching bag for people leaving Christianity because of Calvinism and all this stuff. But this guy's undergoing some kind of change, and there's something worth listening to in what he's saying, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I can understand like what John was saying, why I believe they're probably terrified of someone like him. For the simple fact, it's kind of like a Pharisee thing almost, isn't it? It's sort of like the control, the Wizard of Oz is about to get exposed, that he's just a puny little man behind the curtain.
Yeah.
He's not the big scary booming voice.
Isn't it? You find it interesting that so many Christians are able to subscribe to much or pretty much all of what Jordan Peterson has to say, even though he himself says very explicitly that he's not a Christian. He doesn't want to be claimed by any group and all these other things. But so much of the, to use the term, the Christian meme complex, is found in things that he says, and real truth that he does espouse registers with people, and they have a moment of recognition. And very often, I think he's distilling a lot of experience of life into a statement, a phrase, a paragraph, and people are going, they recognize something in that, and then they become Petersonian in their worldviews, and he's not a believer, but so many, not a believer in the sense that we would understand it, but so many people are very happy to use the wisdom they get from the things that he talks about and bring it over into their endeavors to follow God, right? And someone like this Derek Webb hasn't said much else, hasn't done anything much different to that, I don't think. I've listened to almost all of it. I woke up and that your email had already been up there for 7 hours, so I only got a chance to get in there. But he's talking about things. He does have a lot of biblical. I know he quotes James and others. He does have some biblical.
So if somebody was
reference.
saying these things and never had claimed to be a Christian, we might be less hard on them than we are on Derek because you have apostatized. Now let me be even more careful. Something like that.
What I'm saying, if we were to take a transcript of what he's talking about, get some AI and put Jordan Peterson's mug on it and get an AI Jordan Peterson voice and then play that, I doubt that you'd have too much pushback from most people.
Oh, wow. That's a very interesting way to say that.
Do you know what I mean? Because sometimes the vessel is what we find objectionable rather than the message. And because we object to the vessel, the message becomes unacceptable. You can have a nice cup of coffee made in a dirty cup. Do you know? And so the coffee smells good, but we're looking at the cup thinking, when was the last time it was washed? And, and I think with the likes of Derek Webb and others, and my experience in my memory with him is only what I've seen today, I do find it helpful with them, and including Jordan Peterson. I try not to be a Christian listening to them. It's a really challenging exercise, but I try not to listen to them as a Christian, but as a person who's trying to think critically. And I let little Christian John ponder those things later, because if I'm approaching it with my Christian colored glasses on, there is the SNR, the signal to noise, the ratio between them is huge, and I don't hear half the things that are said, which would actually be beneficial to me and enlightening in my walk with God, because too much noise going on from my standard mode of interacting with with the screen, for example. So anyway, yes,
we got to end it here. Forging Beyond Belief is saying, if you want to participate in FSI, donate or support the channel, and Kevin will email you. I also need your email address. So if you support, if you go to beyondthefundamentals.com, there is a donate link in the menu, and there's 5 ways if you want to. If you use PayPal, I get the email address automatically. If you use something else, you need to send me your email address so that I have it, because it does not automatically give me your email address. But I want to thank everybody who came and shared and spoke with this tonight. Is everybody okay if we pick up on this video next time and keep reviewing it? I think there's a lot of stuff here.
I was going to ask if you could do that, because the amount that I've learned, I'm talking a lot, aren't I? The amount that I've learned out of talking about 2 minutes of video.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had some what may turn out to be real paradigmatic shifts. You know,
Yeah.
I can't escape having a paradigm. I can just try to recognize it and be prepared to move it, you know?
Yeah. FSI is
You know.
powerful in the way John said it and dangerous in the way Kyle said it.
Yeah. You can't go back to left of bang. All right, guys. Yeah, thank you all for joining for this discussion and being willing to go live. I know usually we do this offline, and everybody who's watching, thanks for watching.
Lessons, guys.
We're good.
Have a good one. We'll see you in